I'm Dan Warriner. I work as a chaplain with Pediatrics Hospice, and I also work with the Pediatric Palliative Care team. When somebody is admitted to hospice, they are diagnosed with a terminal illness and given a prognosis of 6 months or less. And I work with the spiritual care team that assesses spiritual needs. I come across families who have a loved one who is ill, and I work with the loved one and I work with the family system to work on spiritual issues. I work with little ones who have chronic lifelong diseases in the pediatric palliative care. I assist with meeting with them. I assist with talking about them about their illness and what their illness brings up, whether it's going through stages of grief together, assisting their grief journey with walking with them through discussing what's happening, talking about lifelong issues of love and things that they've hated and forgiveness, and processing emotional issues that come up as they get towards the end of their life. A lot of times this can bring up a lot of existential issues like who is God and am I forgiven? Do I get to go to heaven? Do I have to go to hell? And I can be a companion for the journey for people who are processing some of these really weighty issues and matters of life and death. Being an ordained minister, I also experience my perception in the church has been sometimes it's not okay to engage emotionally with being honest about our emotions. When it comes to coping or emotional issues that come up when somebody's struggling with a terminal diagnosis or a chronic illness, there's a lot of different formulas that you can come across with people. There's the 5 stages of grief from Kubler-Ross. There's different paradigms that people have, but a lot of issues of family come around, relationships that have gone sour, relationships that are too close and enmeshed, or relationships of loss that come around at the end of life. There are issues with other significant relationships as well, friends, either positive or negative relationships, and there's also relationships with God or the sacred things in their life. And when there's been an inadequate processing of those things, when there's been relationships that have gone wrong for various reasons, then they can sometimes be a hindrance towards coping at the end of life. They can be a hindrance towards resilience as somebody struggles with what brings them comfort. Relationships that have been avoided can be troublesome because they leave somebody with a sense of incompleteness or unfulfillment or a lack of clarity in what's going on in their life. And then relationships that are too close leave people with the sense that I can't be apart from this person. If they die, if I die, where will they be without me? They can't exist without me. And so the coping there is that they can exist without their loved one. They're not their loved one and their loved one's not them. But moving it from a stage of what might be unhealthy love to an area of healthy love and appreciation. We're not working we don't have a magic wand. I can't fix things miraculously, but I can walk with somebody as they struggle through it, trying to be a counselor to them, trying to be a companion for whatever journey they're on, whatever journey that God has them on. With little ones, sometimes it's very different because the stage of development really factors into where they are in their journey. Little ones might just need to play it out, and after something traumatic happens in their little life, then they may need to reenact the trauma with Transformers, or they may need to pretend or play with pretend guns because they are thinking about what's happening in a traumatic situation, and they're living it out through play. And as they get a little bit older in the adolescent years, and communication begins to change, and the way they process and interact with life changes too, there are different ways that people can process and struggle through different emotions. In the adolescent years, it's not an area where I have a lot of experience, but what I have seen is that sometimes when you need to be with someone, playing video games is an adequate form of spiritual care. Just being with that little one and letting them know that you care because you want to play games with them or do puzzles. It's a way that you share relationship, and that in and of itself can be a God-given way towards healing. Relationships that aren't healthy can be very troublesome. And if somebody's avoided a relationship with a parent or a spouse, it's not something that goes away, it's something that gets diverted, and that power goes other places. That the momentum in that goes other places. So if somebody has avoided a toxic relationship with a parent, that doesn't mean the pain goes away, and it doesn't mean that the struggle goes away. But the little one will process that in different areas and maybe need extra care in different areas of life.
I was encouraging a friend of mine of recent that was holding to write letters to her kids because she's about to pass away. Or at some point, I don't know when she's going into hospice, but she has a terminal cancer. I believe that's what she said. I didn't want to quite get into it all, but she'd been stuck. And one of my encouragements of her was actually write the letters so that you could go on to your next thing. And so certain relationships, I guess what I would suggest, and I don't know if you had agreement with that, is just certain relationships where you feel like you're missing something is to write to them or contact them, because by not contacting them you're keeping yourself kind of like stuck if that's affecting you. Any suggestions to that, or agreement, or
I think the legacy that we leave with our family, the legacy we leave with our kids, is very it can be very dramatic and effective to parents and people that you're caring about. Any relationship, I think, can hold a lot of power over us as we struggle with suffering and illness and death. When there are issues of relationship that stop somebody from progressing to the next step in their illness, I think there are a lot of great tools to get somebody over that bridge, to bridge the gap between what they're struggling with. And I think writing letters are very appropriate. Somehow a legacy project. A woman told me all about her dreams and all the ways that her dreams were going to affect her child. And so writing them down would have been a very beautiful way to share that with her son. Sometimes writing a story, singing music. We call them books of legacy books or story books. There's even an app on our phone that we have that can be used for legacy projects. Somebody likes to take photos of things that they love. And there's a lot of life review that happens at the end of life. So people tend to process all of their things, all the stuff that they've collected all over their life, and intentionally write a note down and give that object to somebody. It can be a way to transfer a life memory to somebody else.
And I think that's also important, even not terminal. Someone who might have a long cancer, or just even a long dealing situation of health issues, or even just normal life. Avoiding things or not putting something together isn't necessarily always healthy as well. Holding things in your own life doesn't necessarily allow you to, in one sense, to live life.
I'm convinced that we need people to be healthy, and so in some sense I wholeheartedly agree that you can't be isolated and be healthy, and people need others to experience the fullness of life that God has for us. And relationships are a very powerful way to grow in our faith too. Just thinking about it like that, as we share the journey, even if it's towards death with somebody else, interacting in those ways are very powerful, very moving.
Yeah, it's definitely.
And the power of the Spirit at the end of life, that somebody would not move on progressing physically in the normal progression of their illness because of the volition of their spirit, the choices that they wanted to make, are very evident, especially in hospice.
How so?
There have been times where somebody has been dying and they plateau in some way that can't be quantified, and all of a sudden a loved one shows up, or somebody plays a special song, and they all of a sudden change rapidly and die overnight.
So they're able to have kind of their own closing.
In some sense, they get resolution in whatever way they want.
Yeah.
And it's most evident to me at hospice because we see a lot of it. We're there for a lot of people who are declining. Sometimes they're waiting for a priest to show up to give them that last blessing. They're waiting for a loved one to arrive from travel. They're waiting for a special song or a special memory that somebody shares. They're waiting for people to not be in the room because they don't want their loved ones to be there during their death. So there are a lot of things that can affect the timing of death too, even in relationship to the will of the spirit.
Interesting. Very cool. Well, thank you, Dan.
Welcome.
Much appreciated.